The intestine should be positioned with two limbs parallel to each other and the mesentery of one next to the mesentery of the other. This way, the antimesenteric side is visible and facing upwards. This demonstration will create a two-layer anastomosis. The outer layer is done with non-absorbable braided suture, and the inner with absorbable braided suture. There are various ways to perform an intestinal anastomosis, including the use of only a single layer or using monofilament suture. Much of this is left to the surgeon's preference. In this video, the sutures are all cut to approximately 18 centimeters in length. Gently grab the intestine and take a seromuscular bite on each limb. Each bite should be the same distance from the mesentery. A knot is tied. There are many methods of tying intracorporeal knots, including the C and reverse C method, in which the right and left hand alternate holding the suture to form a loop and make a knot. Here, we use a method in which the suture is held in the grasper and looped around the needle driver. The direction of the loop alternates, being up or down as it leaves the grasper. The loop is thus alternately passed over the top or under the bottom of the needle driver. Notice how the suture is held towards the tip of the grasper, perpendicular to the jaws, and with the curve of the grasper facing the needle driver. A total of 3 interrupted stitches are thrown. A longitudinal enterotomy is made on both limbs of bowel, equidistant from the midline. The length of the enterotomy should not extend beyond the seromuscular stitches. Take care to assure both enterotomies are of the same size. The enterotomy is ideally done with a surgical energy device. which burns the edges and makes them easier to see during simulation training. For this demonstration, a caustic silver nitrate stick is used to color and better define the bowel edges. A stitch is thrown at the apex of the enterotomy with the knot on the outside. The needle can be retrieved with the needle driver or with the grasper, as shown. This suture will be used to form the posterior wall of the anastomosis. The next stitch is thrown very close to the first one and is used to bring the suture to the inside of the bowel. A simple running stitch is then performed to create the posterior wall. The first stitch must be close to the prior one. It is important to take even, full thickness bites. And to not travel too far with each bite. The stitch is run in a forehand fashion until reaching the inferior corner. At that point, alternate between forehand and backhand passes to assure proper bites as the stitch is continued around the corner anteriorly. One way to reposition the needle from forehand to backhand is by placing it tip up in the grasper and pulling on the suture to adjust the angle. Avoid rotating the needle too far, as it will make repositioning it in the needle driver difficult. Alternatively, the needle can be held loosely in the grasper and the suture gently pulled to swing the needle into position. The last bite is taken to leave the suture on the outside of the limb on the right. The anterior wall is started with another absorbable suture, placed very close to the initial knot. This is run in a similar fashion to the posterior wall. Take full thickness bites and try to include slightly less mucosa than serosa, so as to avoid excessive outpouching of mucosa. At the completion of the anterior wall, The needle is cut and suture is tied to the suture from the posterior wall. A final layer of interrupted ceremuscular stitches are placed anteriorly with non-absorbable suture. Again, there is variation in the number of layers used for intestinal anastomoses based on surgeon preference and the operative situation.